Hello, I'm Eagle Guards one on Instagram, and this is fucking talking shit with Eagle, episode 775. Hopefully, you guys have enjoyed the first day of your new year. I've got a great guest for us this evening, Jeff from Beachgrass. How you doing this evening? You want to tell us how you're doing and where they can find you?
Yep, Jeff, I'm from Beachgrass. Appreciate you having me on the show. I'm down in Southwest Michigan, and but move all around the state, and got lots of love for all our cultivators everywhere in the mitten. You know what I mean?
Right on. There is definitely a lot of talented people in the mitten, that's for sure.
hmm And you can find us on the social platforms at my_beachgrass and beachgrass_events. And those are two different accounts, which we'll get to as we're talking.
I will be partaking this evening. Did you bring something to smoke on while we're chatting?
Yeah, I got a couple just in case, and then I brought a couple more that I'll have to, manufacture as we go. But yeah, I got a few for tonight.
What you got?
So first one I got right here is Dog's Waltz Poodle Nuts Cut, which is it's a clone only cultivar. She's really sensitive to hermaphrodism, so light leaks, pest intrusion. She decides she's going to be a heat pretty quick, you know. So she's one of those cultivars that doesn't have, like, I would say, commercial applications, but being in the trace dog lineage and purple Urkel, she's got probably one of the best floral bouquets of anything I've ever come across, And so that's the first one we'll start with tonight. What you got over there?
I got a little bit of some Afghan Kush that was gifted to me by another cultivator. So I'll be smoking on that while we talk this evening. Pretty good, pretty darn good.
Oh, yeah.
So
Excellent choice there, brother.
So let's start this out where we usually do. When did cannabis come into your life? When was the first time you consumed or used the plant?
I think around 12 years old, maybe on the cusp of 13. We'll put it in that window. I had an older brother who was into the Grateful Dead, and those things kind of came with that crowd, and so it was at home and accessible, and they looked like they were having a good time every time they went out somewhere and burned a little bit. So I thought, maybe I should be partaking in what they're doing as well. It became a medical necessity many decades, 2 decades roughly after that experience. So it's had different roles in my life at different phases of time, and but it's been omnipresent throughout, minus a few little gaps.
I like that. It's same here. It has served different purposes throughout my life, but it has always been there nonetheless. So was it semi-steady? Was it something that continued to be in your life, or did it
Oh
that was a
yeah.
one-time thing and you come
Yeah,
back to it?
no. I mean, from there, the love grew for a long time, and I was a fish head, and loved that whole scene. And again, it's part of that culture. Growing up, I grew up in Indiana, right over the line from Michigan, and the first cultivator I knew was actually a friend of mine's father. And he eventually, got in some trouble for what he was doing in Indiana. And, it was always a very real thing that what we were doing over there wasn't legal. And, I said my relationship with it evolved into more of a medical necessity through, the wanderings of life. And so that's where, you know, recreational, medical, but the relationship's always been there. You know what I mean? For me, it was part of my addiction recovery, pain therapy, and you know, it's essentially why we landed our family here in Michigan, was to have access to cannabis, because at the time Illinois still wasn't medical, which is where we were living, and Indiana, where we grew up, was also, you know, still isn't there. So it was a good thing we came to Michigan a decade ago, because otherwise we'd still be waiting. You know what I mean? But my doctor in Illinois, you know, stone cold looked me in the face and didn't advise using cannabis as medicine. But he was okay with me being on lots of prescription drugs and things. And, you know, so at a certain point, I had to make decisions for me that were going to make me better. And cannabis was a part of that. And then from there, as you know, medicine and then cultivation kind of turns into an obsession. And then my wife and I ended up hosting a 2-day music festival that was a licensed cannabis event this past year. So, you know, it's like I said, the relationship evolves every day for me.
Right. It is definitely an incredible mess, and that's 100% sure.
But I did, you know, I always like to say that I came to Michigan as a patient, and I was very fortunate that through, it was actually my wife's nephew, I had a caregiver in place essentially, and Pooney, and I don't mind giving him a shout out, I will all day. Pooney was a wonderful caregiver who, you know, not only provided consistent, clean, quality meds from, you know, elite genetic lines and things that not everyone was doing. He had conversations with me about cultivation, which eventually led to me becoming a caregiver myself. So that's that community of passing that knowledge, sharing that knowledge, you know, kind of ends up building the whole life around everything we're doing. But it's because of respect for the plant, power of the plant. You know, it's that simple. But he definitely, and he's in the process of opening a micro business here, probably in spring 2023 in Buchanan, called Lifted Craft Cannabis. And I'm looking forward to that, because, you know, we need quality craft, small batch cannabis is what we do. You know, that's what it's about. The licensed market's they're not going anywhere. They're going to be here. So it's nice to see some things like that hitting that side too. You know what I mean? So, but as I ramble around, Pooney was a wonderful caregiver. He made sure that I had the meds that I needed on the schedule that I needed. We had conversations about what was working for me, what's not working for me. You know, he was, I always say, you grow with your eyes, nose, you know, touch, everything. And he's one who does that. When he looks at things, it's with all of the senses. And you can tell the quality of a product if you really analyze it with all of your senses, you know. And that's what caregiving about, is providing consistent quality meds for our patients, you know. So that was a really, really big takeaway that I had from him, that I try to carry through to my relationship with my patients, you know.
It's pretty awesome. So I kind of want to, I guess I'm going to flip back and forth a little bit here. Well, you talked a little bit earlier about what you're smoking, it being somewhat prone to hermaphrodism there. You know, most growers would have thrown that out, you know what I mean? But obviously you found the medicine is worth, you know what I
It's
mean?
worth the squeeze, brother. On that one, it is. And this one isn't throwing like nanners in the structure. It'll usually change on the bottom. So at a minimum, I can chase the sacks off and not wreck my room. My flower room door is right behind me there, you see the little nice orange glowy light. I do have these tents back here. These are Mars Hydro LEDs that I use for doing seed selection, so I don't have to screw up my flower cycle over there because of things like hermaphrodism and whatever. So new genetics in here, stable genetics get to go over there. We run a perpetual cycle so that I can make sure I always have meds for my patients. And that's something I really pride myself in, is running a clean, consistent row. You know, patients need meds. I don't want to be scrambling, although we know a bunch of wonderful cultivators who would jump in the necessity point. But you know, that's a big deal for me, is making sure that things are running smooth, brother, you know. So yeah, it is. That's what I said. It's not a commercial cultivar. You can't do it in a big room because I can chase my 2 plants in the table, or 4, you know, whatever I've got in there at the time. When you have 500 of those, you can't chase it. You know, something's going to sneak through.
But I guess with that being said, and if we're talking about cannabis in as a medicine, it can't be done on an individual scale. It's things, little things like you've talked about with this cultivar. You know, it's working with your patient, finding that one that works best with them, finding a proper harvest time that works best with them. You know what I mean? And just little things like that. Cannabis is a very individualized medicine, and at a large scale, that can't be achieved. I don't believe.
No, the connection to the plants, connection to the environment. You know, the biggest thing for us about indoor growing is uh, beyond genetics and all those things. It's environmental controls. You know, just like kids, just like anything else, they're happiest when they're in the right environment. And so that's essentially what we are, is the caretaker of the environment that these things are going to be nurtured in. I personally like to I'm a barbecue grower, I call it. I'm kind of low and slow, which I think lower temperatures, certain things tend to bring out more of that phenotypic expression, which I think is very, very important to the medical side of cannabis. You know, I think the more we got to be careful with breeding, you know, and I'm not a breeder, never, we're just not there yet. But if we start homogenizing genetics to a point where everything kind of looks the same, smells the same, tastes the same, we're losing some of those unique characteristics of those landrace strains that are really important to the medical side. You know, might be some banging stuff that gets you blowed, but we need to focus on bringing CBD ratios up a little bit while still maintaining those THC contents. And so it's a dance, but that phenotypic expression, the plant, each one of these plants that I have in here has something inside of it that's just waiting to come out, right? And so provide the environment to bring it out, do the things that are best suited to each cultivar to bring them out. I do use nets. You know, we have a very standardized process that I use throughout my growing cycles. But within that standardized process, there's still unique processes for each of the cultivars. You know what I mean? And it takes time to get to know the genetics. Some like to feed heavy, some like to feed light, some need, you know, those things. It's really almost impossible to do large scale.
I totally agree. I totally agree, especially when you have one like that, the one I keep referring back to. You know, most cases that one there doesn't like the high feeding. You know what I mean? You have to kind of leave her a little bit on the light feeding side.
Yeah.
So
So she's slow, and I run it's Chemi Jones, which is kind of in the dog lineage as well. So it's Chem Dog by Casey Jones, and it's the Chemi Jones 40% cut. But if you look at them structurally, the branching, everything, the build is very similar. Their feed tolerances tend to be a little bit different. So they're that little minute nurture part is slightly different, regardless of the similarities. I always love seeing like kind of sister genetics where maybe they're slightly different lineages, but closely related, and watching what comes out. It's fun growing these things.
it is. It is. Yeah, I often refer to cannabis as basically a plant spirit medicine. It's by smelling the jars, by it having its individual profiles, it calls out to the consumer, and basically your nose there lets you know which one's going to work the best for you. And that's basically how plant spirit medicine works. You would walk through the forest with a mindful intent, and you know what I mean, when you come across that herb or whatever that ails you, or would aid you rather, you kind of make that deal that you guys are going to work together. And I believe that's how cannabis works. When you smell that jar, you've made the deal.
And there are that's what I love about the caregiver side of things, is when you get to know their patient, our patients, they have unique profiles and personalities of what they need. So I now not only get to cultivate for what I need, but we get to have conversations about what they need. And strong lemon terpene profiles are one that a lot of people love or hate, and it's it's like that divided line. And one of my patients, just that's what really works well for her. So not something I personally am a fan favorite, but it's fun cultivating some of those things for them, and seeing that. And ideally everyone would be cultivating for themselves. In a perfect world, we all provide for ourselves on all levels, but it's not. And there are patients who don't have the ability, whether that's physically, whether that's from a space standpoint. If you live in an apartment, you can't, what I'm saying? There are limitations. So that's where the caregiver system is always important to me, is knowing those things. When I first came to Michigan, beyond knowing a few cultivators over the years, and conversations and hobbyist interest, I wasn't ready to throw plants in the ground and provide myself with the medicine that I needed at the time. So it actually took me almost 6 years before I was really at a level where I felt it was time. And so, it's not a hobby thing. It's a passionate project that, in my case, I've disrupted spaces and structures, and there's an investment, and not to mention the time, care, and all those things. So it's been a beautiful system for us that's kind of restructured our life. And I kind of touched on it earlier, but I jumped to medical cannabis because I was an opiate addict. So I grew up as a early 20 something in the early 2000s, which was during the explosion of pharmaceutical opiates and opioids. I then went to live in Chicago while my wife was working on her master's in occupational therapy. Heroin's on every street corner in certain neighborhoods, and I happen to work near a lot of them. So developed some really ugly habits. We had a son on the way. needed to make some life changes. I went pharmaceutical route, got really heavy into NA, was using Suboxone and whatever else. I think I was on like 6 prescriptions to control anxiety, depression. Then the side effects of those medications that came with it. So I weighed 225 pounds. I was fucking miserable. We had our daughter. It was 5 days after she was born. I tried taking my life because I never saw a life without using dope. What had happened to was I'd use heroin long enough, cycle off Suboxone, use heroin again, cycle off Suboxone, you know what I mean? And this went on for roughly 2.5 years from when I first started getting clean. I had a great 9-month run when we first had my son and my father-in-law passed away. And then, once you start using again, that cycle eats you. So we were living in LaPorte, Indiana at the time, looking for homes. I got a little grounded, decided that it was time to really make an effort. We had 2 kids now. They needed a father. So my wife said, call your buddy. We knew his father had a great cultivator who was who happened to be here in Michigan. They happen to live here in New Buffalo. New Buffalo has always been a second home to me. They were very close with the family. She said, call him up, go get a bag of weed, Jeff. She said, you were always happy when you smoked cannabis, when you weren't drinking or, doing all these other things. She said, maybe the problem wasn't that. Maybe the problem is all this other stuff. And so that really started the exploration of cannabis as an adjunct therapy to what I was currently doing. We ended up purchasing a home here, moved here. Like I said, it took, I think, 6 months after living in Michigan that I met Pooney. He had just hosted, he used to do a music festival every year for his birthday. In one of those fate moments, he and I share a birthday, but he's 2 years younger than me, I believe. And so he happened to be doing this festival, and he would do crazy shit. I mean, it was like Del the Funky Homo Sapien from the Gorillas. Gift of Gab was out there before he died, which my now 12-year-old can almost do all of alphabet aerobics, which is a pretty pride moment. But so we connected at this music festival, which has always been a part of my life. He's a caregiver. I'm looking for medical cannabis. Like this, it just made sense, right? And so within, I think 6 to 8 months of using cannabis, I went from 6 medications to 0. Coming off Suboxone was a bitch. My wife and I think she thought I was like using again, and I gave her the I'm not. And so I went and took some naltrexone I had, not understanding like the physiological things I was doing to my body. So I ended up throwing myself in a hospital detoxing again after thinking I was clean for like 2.5 years or whatever. And that showed me what those medications really do to you too. Damn, it fucking killed me, to be honest. And then I landed with cannabis only, and that's been the ride since. I am a supporter of other psychedelic assisted therapies when needed and where needed. But for my journey, cannabis was it. And I found Denali Healthcare, which their kind of program was a Suboxone to cannabis. I'd already done the off Suboxone part. So the card was, we were working with cannabis. All this started from knee injuries and getting painkillers that I probably shouldn't have been prescribed at such a young age and those things. So one thing leads to another. I'm a firm believer that, our path is what it is. And I'm here, very fortunate.
Thank goodness for that. Yeah, I'm glad you found your way out, because that's a tough one, man. It really is. And that's always been kind of my advocate, not always, but since a lot of my family has passed from pharmaceutical overdoses and stuff like that. Yeah, I definitely believe cannabis can be, that at least transition or weaning off. It isn't the answer, and if you don't need it in the end, that's fine. But even if you continue to use it, it's no harm there either.
Correct. And you know, a big part of it is recovery requires lifestyle changes, perspective changes, and things like that. Cannabis can help ease that initial trauma of trying to relinquish a burden that a lot of people have carried for a long time. Now for the people who are dealing with pain and issues, then it can provide the medicine they need instead of what they were taking, which may not be better. And there are cases where pharmaceutical intervention is needed. You know what I mean? I'm not a doctor or a disadvocate of that. But in my case, it was not something that was needed to sustain day-to-day life. And in fact, at a certain point, it was ruining my life to a point where I didn't want to live anymore. So, that's not good. And cannabis was a very, very crucial part of getting out. Cultivation and growing the plant then really changed my relationship with the medicine. That's where I think the relationship with the medicine grows. I know you've had my buddy Chuck on the show. We love CAO Craft and what they're doing and providing medicine that changes lives for people. And that's the part of cannabis that I think the average consumer has almost no clue exists. It's when you turn to cannabis because you have stage 4 cancer or whatever, and your treatment options are nothing other than hospice care, and then you start researching some things online and maybe find cannabis is an option, or you knew someone who talked to you about it at some point. But that medicine and the care that goes into the products and that interpersonal relationship is that's a whole nother dimension of what goes on with cannabis. You know what I mean? The powerful, profound impact. In my family personally, both of my parents are cancer survivors. My mother-in-law is a cancer survivor. We lost my father-in-law to cancer. We lost my my sister-in-law to brain tumors that progressed over the course of 15 years. So familiarity with cancer is way too close to home. So to have another option available, because we've known a lot of people who get to the no option point, and for most of these folks, cannabis isn't their first thought. Even
sadly,
it's not even part of the conversation sometimes, which is mind-boggling. But put that aside, let's take all the patients who have no options and let's at least make cannabis an option there always, and so until it's ingrained in the medical system, caregivers and awareness of what these products can really do will always exist. My wife is an occupational therapist. That's her professional training and what she does. She's worked in Indiana, and I see your buddy in the back there. Not to interrupt. What's your buddy's name?
It's actually Buddy.
Buddy? I fucking love it, man. I got 100-pound Rhodesian Ridgeback named Rosie, who's we went to my brother's last night for the New Year, so she had to go to her doggy daycare for the weekend. So she's probably gonna be a little pouty with me tomorrow when I see her, but go grab her early. I like having our furry friends around, but sorry to digress. So my wife works in a very traditional healthcare setting, has hospital, clinical setting. Um, and I am not going to speak for her. I never speak for anyone else, but observationally speaking, there are aspects of the healthcare system that really fail the patient and lead to a process of recidivism and coming, it's like the revolving door effect. Enough medicine to get better to go home for a while to get back. And obviously the whole billing structure and certain things that are way bigger than anything that we're going to achieve here tonight exist. But when you're a person who wants to provide care and you work in a system that kind of is not espousing that as the mainline treatment course, becomes difficult. And then further, she works in a system that really doesn't support use of cannabis as a mainline treatment. So that becomes really difficult conversationally, where at home, I'm putting topical balms and using things, we're using them as hand massage for things that broke and had to put back together. And, you know, but then she goes out to treat patients and can't introduce that as part of her treatment protocols. So it's a really fucking weird world we live in sometimes when these two things, you know what I mean? And for us in our household, it's pretty much an everyday conversation because of where she works and then what I do, and we both believe in the power of the plant and the medicine, but until obviously federal changes, society changes, whatever the hell you want to call them, what she knows about the plant and plant medicine can't be interjected into her everyday practice of care. She's licensed in Indiana and works over the state line in Indiana. Again, we live like a couple miles from the border, so proximity and where we have lived and licensing and things like that. So she really can't introduce it because it's not the part of anything there. You know what I mean? At least in Michigan, you can be somewhat tacitly open to it, I guess I would say. But if you go to major medical facilities, it's still not a mainline conversation. If anything, it's it's like a tacit, okay, that's not going to hurt anything, right? It's not an open admission that there's fucking thousands of years of use, but 150 years of medical applications that have been pretty well documented going back to whatever, late 1800s, and then things got screwy in the 30s, and here we sit still trying to put things back together. And so, it's just weird. And that's kind of all I can say about it,
It's kind of sad that cannabis can't be the first source of action there, to be honest with you, that they are held back in that way. Because honestly, even if it is like a physical therapy, I believe the two can very much work hand in hand. I'm pretty sure she doesn't question that either. But it's pretty sad. But I guess I want to again pull back a little bit here, because you made a few strong points as well, and that's the cultivation side of things. And I really believe, and I always have myself, and the more I've talked to people, it seems to be true. That seems to be you know, they had a respect or they knew the cannabis was a medicine, but when they start cultivation, it completely changes everything. And I always say that I believe that the cultivation side is equal to the medicine itself. I really in my heart believe that. And if the patient is capable of, you know, being able to produce that medicine, there's no stronger of a feeling than that can do. And if you're sick, well, you know this as well, I'm sure, that I can't is when you, because I've raised my kids that say the can't was a dirty word. Can't is a dirty word. You can do anything. It's a matter if you want to or you don't want to. But when you're physically unable for because you're sick, one reason or another, even mentally, you know what I mean? You beat yourself up mentally to where you just can't, or you're telling yourself you can't. But when you can do something and it's a matter of life and death for you, or and you've done it, you know what I mean? I did, you know what I mean? I can. That in itself is a huge, powerful medicine. And it's an amazing plant. And I think so. Obviously, you kind of took that on too when it became your medicine. You said yourself it changed. That was a turning point for you. As I
Totally. And again, Cooney, with all of his patients, was very open to whatever point you want to learn how to do this. I mean, hell, he'll help you design it. It was a no limitations. Here's what I know. And we were talking all those years about things, but here's what I know. You can do it too. And a very real, you can do it too, just like what you were talking about. And I said, he's a couple years younger than me, but it's like your dad talking to you. And I'm like, fuck, you know what? Yeah, maybe it is time. And he was in the process of, like I said, he's opening a micro business. I've got 3 kids. There's divergent like life things happening. So why not? And he was really awesome for those early stages where you freak out about everything being messed up and whatever. And, you know, yellow leaf is the end of the world and shit. And made me comfortable with the plants that he had already been talking to me about for years. You know, it wasn't like this was foreign concepts. This is years of conversations now just being applied. And fortunately, I took to it like, you know, obsessively and compulsively and probably, you know, maybe in moderately unhealthy ways, but I love this plant. And so it's been a fun ride. Over the last year, things got kind of year and a half, I guess it was. Now we're stretching a little further. Whatever the last round of House bills that were, you know, moderately targeted at the caregiver system was kind of why my wife and I decided to hop on the event train. And what the we did the original Cannabis Crown. We did opt to host it as a licensed event. We did it at the Hartford Motor Speedway, which is just a rad little place in itself. You know, cool stuff happening there every weekend, and like really just American community, like good stuff, you know. We were able to do a 2-day music festival that only incorporated Michigan-based brands, which was important to us, that we not work with any operators that are not giving back to our community in some way, shape, or form, or came from our community in some way, shape, or form, because there are different levels of that. We are very fortunate to work with Redemption, did one of our consumption lounges. They work with Sons and Daughters United. I think I see yours over there somewhere down there. Yeah. So, and Sons and Daughters United does amazing things for like not just the cannabis community, but like the community, like Christmas toy drives. And then they also work with the Great Lakes Expungement Network, which helps out the cannabis community in pretty awesome ways. So, and then Green Stem Provisioning did our on-site sales, because if you're doing a licensed event, you have to have, and so my wife and I don't own a dispensary. We were, we're like new licensees, if you will. I've been a caregiver for a while. I've been a patient for a long time. She's been a patient for a long time. She was a caregiver for a while. We know a lot of musicians, we know a lot of cultivators. It kind of started making sense. And I know that's not something that would probably make sense for most people on an average day, but for us it did. And so I think it was October of last year maybe is when we really started spinning the ball on that. And we said, let's see if we can do it on the license side. How fucking hard is it going to be? Close friend of ours at the time was, okay, so I'm switching up now. So this is, I'm going to interrupt myself. This is, it's Pure Kush by Ghost OG. So it's got some nice OG lean with you were smoking that Afghan Kush, and whatever. So that we're going to switch it up now, start burning that one. But, so we, one of my longtime friends, Joe Marcinek, at the time, he's been doing this now for, I don't know, a couple years, but he calls it the Dead Funk Summit. Started with Melvin Seals, Jerry Garcia Band, George Porter Jr. from the Meters. So, all the Neville brothers, and then the associated Dumpster Funks, Tony Hall, and just some really badass musicians. He's pulled some crazy stuff together. And so we love Joe. Have forever, and coming from a Grateful Dead, Fish, Wise from Panic background, again, all these things are making a lot of sense to me. And I don't know if my wife's just really nice to not say no, but she seemed to really be on board. And then further, we saw, I'll be haven't had a drink in 12 years this January, so we were like, we get to do a cannabis festival. I get to go to a festival that is cannabis focused, and that's rad, and in future festivals, we probably will have beer tents, because I have friends who have breweries local to the area. I think there's some cool things in that craft community as well. But for this one, it was really awesome to have that spirit and energy. Then we wanted to do an important part of what we wanted to do was a contest. And so we went and met with Linda from the Spot Labs. Dr. Dave had just joined them, and this is where things kind of get a little sad, I guess, is the easiest way to put it. But they totally were willing to work with us on a contest that was open to recreational growers, caregivers, and then licensed AU facilities. And so, one of the gripes we see a lot is about like illicit products and the illicit market, air quotes, big time, not being tested clean, blah, 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 whatever. I've worked on commercial farms and seen shit that makes you just want to cry yourself to sleep. You know what I mean? And so I thought this was a unique opportunity to put something together that would put in a lab just fucking growers, and at the end of the day, that was the intent. And there was no try to show caregivers are better, show guys who grow in 12 buckets in their fucking garage and have their Michigan 12. And I mean, I've seen some gorgeous flowers come out of some crazy setups. You know what I mean? It's love of the plant yields the results, I think is the important thing at the end of the day. And so I thought it was cool that we had an opportunity to put all those aspects together. Unfortunately, the spot and due to market conditions and things like that, the size of their operation, it's kind of a similar story, whatever. they had to cease testing kind of right as we were going to be opening up submissions. So we didn't get to go forward with that aspect of it. I didn't want to just roll forward with like, it's a lot of logistics and shit. And it was like a month before a festival, a month and a half. We had so many other fucking things to do. So to go find another lab that had the same spirit of Linda, who was like a woman business owner, cannabis business, Michigan based, you know, I, I wasn't going to find that shit in 30 days, coordinate the logistics of all that, and then get samples in and back to a festival. So unfortunately, we went forward, you know, that was done. And hopefully in a future event, we can incorporate something like that again. And we've been spinning the wheels on it. So we went forward with, it was a 2-day music festival, doing it in the spirit of Grateful Dead with local bands, and then some national add-ons into our Dead Funk Summit, which ended up ballooning to like 14 musicians each night on stage, which was just fucking rad. We had all local food vendors, arts and crafts, you know, really cool stuff. We were really proud of what we put together. It happened to be a pretty big weekend in terms of canna events around the state. We support a lot of the other things happening around the state as well. I've worked with a lot of friends on the medical vending side and attended events at Big Cloud. Unfortunately, Gems and Genetics was the same weekend as ours, and their first event I had another conflict, so I wasn't able to make either of those. You know, we have a lot of friends who participate in Camp Hareem, and so we got a lot of love for all sides of what's going on, as long as it's trying to operate with respect for the plant at the end of the day. You know, there's a lot of different ways to achieve that, and whatever. I don't want to digress too far. So we ended up doing our Dead Funk Summit as the linchpin, and Joe and I worked a lot on this because I think too much on shit. So we were trying to do a Dead Funk Summit that was kind of in homage to the music that's been relevant to cannabis culture. So he's a jazz musician by trade. I'd say, you know, like his solo work is all kind of jazz based. So that's like, boom, check, we got it. That's the first one. With Tony Hall from Dumpster Funk, we got funk and old school funk, you know. We had Jason Hahn from String Cheese Incident. So that's now we're getting back into our jam scene. We had Steve Mollitz from Particle, but he's also played with Phil and Friends. So now we got like real Grateful Dead. And we continued up to Calvin Rogers was drumming, and Calvin is I don't know how many Grammys he has exactly. I'm not going to quote it, but he's a gospel drummer. And the dude, I mean, if you go watch some of like his demo stuff on YouTube, it's just fucking nuts. I mean, he's doing sounds coming out of those drums you just can't even imagine. And then we had a killer horn section, Big Sam, who's played with like the Dirty Dozen brass band, straight New Orleans, you know, real jazz. Jonathan Monet's from Ghost Note. So, you know, he does some really different stuff with Ghost Note. They're a cool band to catch. And they played Benton Harbor, you know, so some of these guys are around here. But Joe worked really hard, up to Hannah Graves, who's a local Michigan musician, he included. So we had two female singers, Songbird Shella, who's out of Florida, and then Hannah Graves, who was our Michigan. And so there was a lot of elements there, right? Then our other bands we did throughout the day were all local stuff. Most of our bands included actually caregivers. So we had, I think, 4 out of our 6 other bands had Michigan-based caregivers in them in one way or another, which was kind of a cool piece for me to know on the back end, but not something that we were like throwing out there, you know, because what I noticed is we worked with all our artists and musicians directly. These guys are all independent, hardworking craftsmen. and women. They play shows and travel 300 plus days a year. We as cultivators, once you start a garden, you can't ever leave the fucking thing if you're doing it right. You know, and if you do leave it, you're nervous as shit, you're not having a good time, and you're worried about what the hell's going wrong over there. And for them, you know, it became apparent quickly that our cultures aren't very different. You know, sometimes the people who are putting in the hardest work aren't the highest paid or the most appreciated. You know, and so it was cool to craft that aspect of it and then work with all their people, because they were like, hey, call my sound guy, he's fucking awesome. And so like when the third band was like, call the same guy, which is Ryan Rush with JR Sound Co. That's who you go use. He's awesome. He's locally based, doing small festivals, has killer equipment, worked for like Tao in Vegas, designed systems in Vegas, and, you know, is now here a little more local raising his kids. So it's like really amazing talent. And again, it's craftsman, you know, it's craftsmanship. So down to glass blowers and things like that. What's like unanimously the same is there are a lot of craftspeople. There are people who really care about their trade and what they're doing. And it was cool to have that all incorporated into a festival. We also had Trivium Cannabis doing consumption lounge, and they come from the caregiver system. So talking to those boys was like, you know, I didn't know them before our whole festival adventure began, but throughout it they became like buds. And I knew they were all right because they like pulled up to the festival in a shitload of pickup trucks and started like setting tents up in the backwoods of the speedway and shit. And I'm like, cool, I've been living in that tent over there for like fucking 7 or 10 days. I don't know, bouncing back home or whatever. And so, you know, we found kindred spirits there too. And that was pretty rad. So we got lucky, man. We did a licensed event. Like I said, attendance, we kind of got fucking killed. I'm an honest person. You know, I can admit where we got beat up a little bit. But I stand by the integrity of what we did, and I'd rather do that, you know. So I can sleep a little bit broke, but I can't sleep with guilt.
I love the idea of it. It sounds like an amazing experience. You know, I find, and I've said this a lot about the events too. And the same thing goes with the YouTube cannabis community. You know, I wish that we could all just get along, basically work together and schedule things so the canning community necessarily doesn't have to, you know, pick and choose when multiple events come up. It's like, man, which one do I go to? Because not only is on the consumer side of things, you know, you have to make that choice of which one you're going to go and miss out on. But then again, as like somebody like myself, that when we go to these events, we kind of come in groups. We nerds come in groups. And so that kind of divides us up as well. You know what I mean? Now it isn't just the event. It's like, oh, who am I going to miss out on at that event? So why
it's
not
just one or two people? It is. You're right. It's 5, 10, hell, sometimes 15, 20. And there was a huge jam festival going on in Chicago the same weekend as ours too. So there was like Cannabis and Dead. And we did, you know, we had a good turnout for a first year event. Honestly, I was happy, but I like to see a fucking packed field when musicians are playing and shit like that. You know what I'm saying? Those guys work hard too, so they deserve that, you know. But beyond that, hell, we had a good fucking time. We heard some great music, and there was a lot of great cannabis being smoked around there. And that's the point of this stuff. You know what I mean? Show that it's respectful and responsible, brother.
That's one of the things I like about the event you're talking about there. You know, a lot of these other events, they're getting better. I absolutely love the weekend events, you know, the camping aspect of it. You know, that kind of what made me fall in love with the latest cannabis event scene. You know, we went from the high times type atmosphere to these like more local weekend events, and that's what it's about for me. You know, it's a lot of fun to hang out at the event, you know, during the day, but it's even more fun to go to the campfire at night and hang out with all your friends and smoke some of the great cannabis you may have been lucky enough to pick up through the day. You know, it's that's the big part of it. And in your event, and back to the events, you know what I mean, in general, a lot of times there's a lot of great stuff going on, but there isn't necessarily space. You know what I mean? You could come to these events and, man, like I just said, you want to hook up with your friends, you want to find a table, you want to sit down, you know what I mean? You want to be able to partake in a circle or two. And in the music event or the festival, that sounds like more something that could happen, man. You know, go find your friends, hook up, you know, have a little circle to enjoy the
So
show and smoke. And
we had
that's
originally permitted everything as open camping on the so the track owner at Hartford was like really easy to work with for us. Hartford actually was really easy too. I mean, honestly, we I kept anticipating more roadblocks that never materialized. Not that it was like an easy process. Obviously, there are legal costs, you know, whatever. But from a municipal standpoint, it wasn't like an impossibility. Now they have a pretty good relationship with the track and things like that. He had the space, and we were originally permitted as doing it camping. There were some local cannabis related robberies within like the month before our event, maybe 2 months, because it was like right as we were doing final announcements. So in the end, what we did is a local campground that was nearby opened up spots, and we just opted, other than personnel who were like working with a cannabis company, to not camp on grounds, which was a bummer for me. You know, I came from a world where you disappear from anywhere from 5 days to like 5 months, depending on who was playing and where you were going. And so that camping aspect it is, that's the community. You know what I mean? And definitely the conversations at 3 a.m. are usually the juiciest and getting the most done, because we all know that's when we're the most fluid in our thoughts. But that's where the connection with your people comes, you know. And so I'm with you, brother, on that one. That's an important aspect of these things. And I do like the multi-day events where people are together. You know what I mean?
oh yeah, oh yeah, but much better of a time for sure. For sure. And it gives the customer or the goer, if they do find something they like, you know what I mean, they go sample something, a little bit of something every, you know, throughout the first day. And then if they really like something, they could go back, you know what I mean, and really.
That's an important aspect of it, I think. And, you know, again, we have a lot of love for the smaller events and different medical markets and things. And even with those, it's sometimes a 2 day pop through. And you have a conversation with someone on day one about what, you know, health. Sometimes they don't know what FICO is, or, you know, RSO, whatever. And really, so it's a new concept to them, maybe in fucking entirely. Like they've never, you know, you're shouting letters out. And particularly in today's world where there's, you know, live resin, live rosin, hash rosin, whatever. And people are, I think industry progression has certainly outpaced consumer awareness. And part of that is when you're kind of living in the shadows and an industry that's not allowed to participate in society, then consumer awareness is almost impossible. We ran through it. So because we optioned as a licensed cannabis event, advertising became weirdly difficult through certain avenues for us. So like traditional radio, right? We were talking to Q101 out of Chicago and a few other stations out of like Indianapolis, I don't know, you know, different metro areas around our market. And what they couldn't do was any traditional radio advertising. What they were able to do was use all kinds of back channel advertising, and it's because it was a cannabis event. So for certain things, we were billing it as like a fucking Dead Funk Summit. Certain things, it was the original Cannabis Crown, when that's like really what it was. You know what I mean? And so it is still somewhat weird. Now you can do billboards and stuff, but we're just not there. Had I been Bud Light sponsored, whatever, you know, there's no roadblocks. You know what I mean? Not only by the nature of who's funding it, it's by the nature of what they're promoting. And I live in a region that's known for all of our wineries, vineyards, and all of that. So like wine tours, you know, markets, things like that are not uncommon. If I was to throw a cannabis market in downtown which my town still opt out of recreational cannabis. So, I mean, we're like, you know, we're still not there. I've sat in meetings where people talk about like how they buried all their friends because of cannabis. And I'm like, fuck, we're still there. We're still there. And one of them was my neighbor. That was like a trip. I'm like, shit, she's seen me smoke a lot. So I knew how she really feels now after all these years. But so there are still pockets even within our state that are kind of in a different place, if that makes sense, you know? So conceptually open to not only like medical cannabis but recreational cannabis, and so it's weird. It was nice to be able to do it. It's nice to see that there are municipalities that are like totally on board with it and like, yes, this is a good thing for us. But our city council vote on our event was, I'm going to say this right, we are one no vote away from not being able to host an event, and that was 60 days before our planned event. Because so you got to have all your state applications in prior to the event. And my wife and I are going to participate in I don't know, some kind of video conference with the CRA, like a Q&A about events and organizing them, whatever. But there are some nuanced things that like pigeonhole you into certain dates, right? Which kind of fucks you from a marketing perspective, because I didn't want to sell a single ticket to anything we are marketing as a licensed cannabis event until I have all of my final fucking thumbs up that we're doing a licensed cannabis event. So we don't enter into a situation where every ticket sold is then being refunded later on. And so I'd rather let down Greenstem and our partners who we had committed with on our CRA app than let down a bunch of people in the public. You know what I mean? And at that point, the commitments were low, financially speaking, on their end, high on our end. So, you know, whatever. Put the risk on me because this is my shit, in other words. But we sat in the city council meeting. My wife couldn't make it because she had to stay home with the kids. My parents were having some health issues and stuff was going on. And we were like one no vote away from everything we had done not being a yes. And then now you're trying to retool shit at 60 days. Now, not only that, I still had to take that approval back to the CRA and state and then get your final okay. And so now we were at, I think, 55 to 56 days prior to the event that I'm okay lighting up like ticket links and really, hitting the ground running with this shit. And so when you look at like advertising dollars, and it's all a function of time. Simply put, it is a function of time per dollar spent. And so for new events, some of those things I think are difficult if you're not, if you're Jeff and Jenny from fucking New Buffalo and Beachgrass, you know what I mean? Now, there were a couple other small licensed events. There was like Camp Cannabis, I think, was in the UP, and they were a smaller event, same deal, camp for like 2 days. So it'll be interesting to hear what their experience was. Now, I think they have dispensary and licensing experience. So some of the things that were maybe surprises for us weren't for them in those aspects. But it was a cool process. Life's about lessons you learn from what you're doing, right?
That's right. I respect you guys for going out there and taking the chance putting on an event. It's not easy. There's a lot of paperwork, there's a lot of headaches, a lot of disheartening moments, as you've kind of pointed out.
Oh yeah, shit got wild there at the end. What I can tell you is post event, I kind of, and this is again where cultivation really comes in. I love like stupid sayings in my life, mantras, if you will, whatever you want to call them. So family and flowers is kind of my thing. Those two things are in line, right? Everything's okay. And by the time I got to my festival, neither of those things were in line. I felt like as a father this year, we were slightly distracted and busy, and understandably so. I have great parents who are close and local and are very supportive. When it hit August 28th, like day after the festival, I was just glad I hadn't lost any of the genetics I currently have in house and nothing was fucking dead. You know what I mean? But it was definitely not a level of cultivation that I can be proud of. I'm really hard on myself, and I think that's important. You can always do a little bit better, whether it's the nose, but I was looking at all this shit and I'm like, oh, we can do a lot fucking better. So it was a time for an important reset. That was when we really took the time, and through a friend who had been working the medical markets really hard, just went and hung out with other cultivators and went to a lot of little events and shit all around Michigan, Otsego, Grand Rapids, Big Cloud events. Went and worked different farms, which is kind of cool. Worked with a buddy on a commercial farm, run by some really good guys. But the practices that 10,000 plants necessitate are just fucking sad, man. There's shit being done to plants that shouldn't be done. And luckily, thanks to like the genius of like my buddy Justin, who's just an extraction fucking genius, they can correct a lot of that in the products they then make. But why need to correct anything when you can just start with a good flower? That's the simple answer to all of it. Is if the proper cultivation practices are put forth, then all these end processes and bullshit we do to these plants are not necessary. Very simply put. And so and the only thing you can get are better products from better flowers. So even for things, let's just talk recreational products and shit. Better flowers yield better products, right? We don't have to go through some of the remediation issues and other ugly stuff that goes on to a plant, whatever. I'm not going to beat a drum that's already been beat. But with that scalability, some of that is scalability. So when stacked licensing was allowed, and that was recreational cannabis was billed to the people of Michigan that it was going to be rolled out on what was called the craft brew model, I think was what they were fucking calling it at the time. I remember that like catchphrase that was being rolled around. Put that shit on billboards, maybe, I don't know. But the idea behind that model was small cultivation facilities and up to like a 2,000 plant license, which isn't exactly a small cultivation facility. But what it didn't allow for was, you know, stacking of licensing and certain things from my recollection. I'm not a fucking expert, but vaguely I remember some of that stuff. Now we're at a point where all of those things have been rolled out, and you know, I sat in on the meetings where they were proposing a moratorium on cultivators licenses and certain things, which is fine. But the issue with that is if they put a moratorium on things, a lot of cities in Michigan are just hitting a phase where they're opting in. In fact, the gross majority of them, including most of the municipalities where I live. So I get it that it addresses an issue, but it really is, it's a corrective measure. Kind of like, you know, with the blame being pointed at the caregiver system or illicit growers. I know they don't, whatever, air quotes and shit. The bottom line is at a certain point in the recreational market, the caregivers were relied on as a backbone for that system. And then, you know, and again, this is something I've talked to Chuck about a lot of other cultivators I know, close friend who was, you know, an avid advocate of selling high grade, you know, he was growing like organic flower as a caregiver, and there were overages that he was selling into the system like exactly how it was fucking designed to do. Then at the point where the system caught up, now you're the illicit market, you know, simply put, it's going to disenfranchise people who were the foundational aspect of building this thing you are now disenfranchising them from. And so a lot of this shit that's gone on over the last 2 years with, you know, animosity towards the caregiver system, lots of lobbying dollars being spent through certain organizations that are largely controlled by MSOs and shit like that. It got fucking ugly and a little scary too. As a dude who really operates as a fucking caregiver, you know, who really takes pride in what I do, in my plants, in my patients, it became fucking scary. I got 3 kids. I have a fucking wife. I never rely. I'm a licensed realtor. My wife's an OT, and so we've always derived our, you know, income from those trades, right? So, caregiving was, I fucking love growing. I barely even, you know, whatever. I'm losing shit all up. You know what I'm saying, right? We do it because we fucking love it, simply put. And so, but it became scary to do something I do because of what I love. We started actually, because under the one, I started looking at the legislative proposals as they were written to kind of see, okay, let's say one of these bills passes, where would I have to be a caregiver, right? So without disclosing, you know, whatever, some of the proposed legislation put caps on where you could be a caregiver. So it would have essentially moved you out to agricultural land. I think as the one thing was written, if you wanted to maintain your 5 patient count, you could drop down to like 1 patient, you know, but there are all those little fuck matrices, which I don't really remember anymore. But that was it. We started like trying to figure out where can we fucking move. we don't have the fucking money to go build new buildings, buy land, do shit, you know. And when I have a perfectly good thing I'm doing where I fucking am, how I'm doing it, you know what I mean? Um, but yeah, it got a little, it felt a little fucking scary. I'm not gonna lie. And again, that's because I got three small children who are my that's the first care at, and so um, but then at the end of the day, I love my fucking patients. So, you know, you don't want to give up what you're doing. And I do believe what I do provides them with, you know, the medicine they need. Now, could they maybe go find someone else? Maybe. But we all know caregiver numbers are dwindling, um, which has been kind of a slow trickle, which somewhat to be expected. And as certain people move over to recreational, you know what I mean? There's other dynamics at play, but caregiver numbers are going down. So whether it's going to the license side, whether they're just fucking done, whether they've moved into other markets where there are other opportunities, um, there are less of us providing what we provide. Um, the thing I think briefly talked about when we first spoke is kind of like the masking of medical or dissolution of medical within the framework of the rollout of recreational cannabis. And so I don't know if that's just kind of an aspect of what we're seeing, but certainly the primary focus that we have seen is not on the power of the medicine. You know what I mean? And so I don't know, man. That we believe in it as a medicine. You know, Chuck, there are a lot of people out there who believe in it, in the medicine, because of what they've seen done and heard through all of their networks. And I don't know, that's why we love the system as it is.
Oh, I agree. I agree. And yeah. So I believe the patient should have we should be teaching the patients 100%, because you said it yourself. Caregiver numbers are very quickly diminishing. So we need to teach them to fish before they are left with just recreational cannabis. And you're right. We did speak about it, medical being lost into the recreational side. And since we spoke uh, just the other day, I spoke with the guy that's running the local dispo there, provisioning center, I should say. And he brought it to my attention they were no longer medical. Nobody was no longer medical. So yeah, we're already getting lost in it. Now, with that being said, this was the other thing I said a long time ago. You know, once it becomes more mainstream like that, now we're putting our medicine in the hands of corporate. You know, corporate just wants to sell whatever's hype, whatever's, you know what I mean? And now we have to limit our medicine, which we've already talked about, is very individualized, you know, to the mainstream market. Then what do we get for, you know, constellation? Oh, we'll give them tax breaks and concessions, and you know what I mean? But yet they're gonna limit to what the availability is to what's hype. You know, we're going to be right back to ask your doctor if this is right for you, because now your medicine is going to be all over t-shirts and shit like that. And is it medicine at that point? I
Right.
really, it is and it isn't. It's being, weaned down, and everything's becoming as bland as it ever was. But it's, very tough for the medicine. Now, in a couple, you said you like phrases. Here's a couple of my that I've done and I enjoy. Cannabis is what I love about cannabis is it provides quality of life across the board. If you're using it in medicine, if you're being a caregiver, you've changed, you're doing it because you want a better quality of life. Cannabis is providing that better quality of life for you. Same thing if it's, that last reach option for you. If you're dying from cancer, and unfortunately this was your last reach, you know what I mean? Is it going to kill the cancer? Maybe not. Is it going to provide you with a better quality of life on the way out? Probably. You know what I mean? So it's medicine, 100%. It could save some lives. And we talked a little bit about, again, using it as a tool for rehabilitation. 100% believe that is possible for many reasons. Even on, like you talked about, the opiate addiction, I believe, fecal could be substituted in a little bit higher doses and then weaned down for them episodes too. But I believe the biggest part of that is, again, right back, rehabilitation has to go hand in hand with cultivation. Okay. Because as you've kind of come down and you don't know who the fuck you are anymore, you need to kind of, that medicine that can do, you know what I mean? Start making your own medicine. And through that journey, as you probably known too, you discover as you're digging deeper into that plant, you do learn a lot about you too. You know what I mean? And the relationship of the plant. And what I've kind of come down, this is my favorite saying though. As you cultivate the soil, it cultivates your soul, basically. And so, and as you come to learn about the soil in general, and this is where the medical system spins off wrong. Do you know what I mean? They don't understand the relationship we have with. You look at a plant and you automatically assess it by what it's deficient. You know what I mean? 100%. Why don't they do that with us? We're the same seed. We're using the same we use the same nutrients and everything that plant does. Same sugars. We're all dependent on the same. And as we take it back down to the soil and discover the microbes, what are the microbes doing in the soil? They're breaking down the food, making it available for the plant. What happens in your stomach? Full of microbes, breaking it down, making it, available for us. And you know what I mean? So there's a lot of similarities there. So when we go to the doctor, I just don't understand why they just, don't see the same relationship. You know what I mean? That we're one and the same. When I say this quite a bit too. When I realized that it made me feel so much smaller in the world and so much happier because you know what I mean? I seen my relationship in the grander scheme of things that I realized I didn't have control of shit. And it gave me a nice, really, calming feeling, to be honest with you, to let know that they were something else.
It's a humbling experience is what it is.
Yeah.
These little, goofy ass plants require so much intuitive care to really get the most out of them. And that's an important lesson. I'm a parent. Not all people are parents. But this is like, it's that cultivated love, right? And so, like I said, around August 28th, I had like an oh shit moment that everything was like, and we've spent time getting everything back. And now I'm back to, I've got jars of flowers that I'm really proud of again. And my patients are getting the highest quality meds that I can that I'm capable of putting out. And that's really the important thing, because not only is it disappointing, what I guess, what do I want to say? Like, shit wasn't dying. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't up to a quality level that where I wanted it. Right. You know what I mean? And now it's back to a place where I feel like my patients are also getting the highest level of meds that I'm capable of producing, that's the most important fucking thing. You know, like I said, in an ideal world, everybody does everything for themselves. I don't have like, you know, 100 acres of land to raise cattle and grow corn and do certain things. So I'm dependent on certain other, we try to, you know, again, not to like beat the local drum, but there are awesome farmers markets and all kinds of stuff you can do all around the state of Michigan. Like I said, I spend a lot of time in my truck moving around, and you can usually find something at a roadside somewhere close. And so that's a cool thing that you don't have that anywhere. I mean, we lived in Chicago for a while when my wife was doing grad school. I actually didn't want to move back out here. I was like, you know, we're moving back out to where no one is. What? And now I'm like, you know, get anxiety when I leave the state of Michigan. I'm turned into that guy. And the higher the population density, you know, like the scarier it is. So I love what we have here. We have a really unique place, I think, in this world. Geographically, people in it are, you know, geoscapes. I don't know what the right word is, but in like 10 minutes, I can drive from beaches to rivers to like marshes to farmland to orchards to vineyards. You know what I mean? Maybe a 20-minute drive. That's rad. You know, we have a cool thing here. And so, but I think an important part of all of that is that craft production of things, because that directly goes back to our communities. You know what I mean? And whether it's the actual craft person themselves who earns those dollars, you know, in the case where people are just allowed to openly participate in systems and then pay proportionate income taxes on things as peddlers and different, you know, less expensive licenses, then they're local, right? So farmers markets are local persons who participate in our active economic systems within our communities. They're also raising their kids here. They're also raising their produce here. But that's, again, what our small scale cannabis providers are. And that's something I think sometimes that's forgotten and lost. You know what I mean? Is we're farmers too, just kind of different. You know what I mean? But we have a lot of really, really cool local providers here in Michigan. And that's kind of where I was going with that, I think. And then you even see like my caregiver, Pooney, who's in the process of, like I said, opening a micro business in Buchanan. I've known him for a long time. I know he grows really, really high quality, the highest quality craft cannabis under the micro business license, which again, that was part of that whole craft brew system. So instead of 10,000 plants, why don't you grow like 150, do it fucking well. You know what I mean? Or even, like I said, grow 500 and fucking do it well. But it's scalability. At a certain point, you have to rely on practices and things that are not as hands-on as what we do, you know. But shared knowledge is the most important thing that I think for me within the caregiver system. And this gets to that locality thing. I've been very, very, very fortunate to be surrounded by some awesome caregiver cultivators who are local to my area. They're really different growers in terms of technique and you know, like my one buddy Mike is a really technical grower. He's an HVAC technician by trade, so that makes sense, you know. But what's my buddy Eric's like a, you know, backyard breeder, but really, really diligent about the genetics that he's breeding and trying to really do cool things. So he's trying to breed things that have higher CBD contents with high THC ratios, and that's medicine. You know, he's not looking to bang weight and fill canopies. He's okay dealing with like the poodle nuts, you know, the dogs waltzes of the world who are maybe prone to hermaphrodism and things. But again, those have no viability at a commercial level. And so that's where we always fear the medicine gets lost kind of thing pops up. You know what I mean? Is if we're breeding for 4 pounds of light and for sweet gas or whatever, sweet gas, that's just call it fucking what it is, you know, then what happened to just the sweet? And what happened to just the gas? You know what I mean? And so sometimes it's important to just go back to those roots, not to be cliche in a cultivation world, but the old school shit sometimes is best, you know?
I've been really pushing this, and I'd like for you to talk to your breeder friend about it. Trying to keep things proprietary, and standing by the cultivar you're putting forth. You know what I mean? Instead of, you know, making a point or trying to breeding with what's hot on everybody's mouth so they can sell it easier. You know what I mean? What's in it? And I think, you know, and I always think that's, you know, I understand, I get it, yeah, but I hate it. I hate it. It's somebody that's created things. You know, I'm a craftsman. At one point, I enjoy cooking. You know what I mean? So when I present somebody a meal or I've made something, if their second questions like what's in it, I'm like, well, you know what I mean? It's like putting salt on or ketchup on your food before you've even tasted it. It's like, what? You know what I mean? Come on, man, give it a go before
Give it a shot, and then you can go fuck it up however you want.
You know, and a lot of breeders complain that they won't sell seeds, but that's only the initial until people get used to buying things on merit. You know what I mean? And tests will be done. You know, I'm sure breeders will have tests with, you know, what's in the, not what's in it, but what's, you know, in it. You know what I mean? As far as chemically, that's what should be counts. You know what I mean? It shouldn't be what's behind the X and Y. You know, it should be just what's presented. And I think that will really slow down some of this blending of cannabis to where it's so we can't even tell what cultivar it is anymore. You know what I mean? I've noticed that at some of these competitions, you know, that it's already a thing. At like 50 entries, only a couple will pop out and be like really wowie, you know.
Yes. So I got a lot of theories on shit that are not substantiated by any fact, science, or reason, and I'll proudly proclaim that. But I feel like, again, I call it like the homogenization of phenotypic expression and growth. And it kind of started becoming like optically visual or observable to me. Again, it's the emergence of like LEDs and switching of systems. And so I didn't know if that was like a huge part of it, but I don't know that that's it, but you know, whatever. That's one of my theories I got going is I do feel, and there are some really phenomenal fucking breeders out there. I mean, I don't want to like, I'm not trying to be that guy. You know what I mean? There's still some really, really good stuff being done out there. And I think it's great to have small growers like us popping seeds from these breeders and looking for things because, you know, they can't all pop like 200,000 fucking beans, So it's pretty cool when we can do like 20 of different stuff that might be relevant to our patients. And, you know, lo and behold, we find something really fucking good. And in today's digital world, you can back connect with that breeder and let them know, hey, I popped some of your genetics and this one's been crushing it for my patients who have chronic joint pain in ways that you can't fucking imagine. Do you have any interest in reintroducing this to a line? You know, I mean, not that that happens all the fucking time, but that potentiality is there. So breeding is a really important aspect to, you know, the future development of genetics. But like you said, not just for the recreational market. We need to have the high focus on medicinal. Um, you know, hemp kind of got like its re-jump thanks to Farm Bill and stuff. And so it's cool to see that, you know, being explored. But the marriage of THC and CBD is, you know, wonderful. And so let's like expedite the process of breeding those things and looking for that. And like you said, from cannabinoid testing to terpene, you know, the terpene content and relevance of that, it's cool. That's one thing that's been kind of cool to see, the recreational market understanding. But I think again, it's for profitability is the reason they're understanding it. Because when you open up a fucking bag or jar and it hits you in the face like this, it sells a lot better. My fear always is that terpenes are being introduced and things like that, which are not things we do because I don't have commercially available terpenes at, you know, my economic levels and what I'm doing. So I've got to grow my flower with the terpenes in it. You know what I mean? That's my option. And so, but what I've always understood, and this is again, thanks to my caregiver, he had conversations about terpenes and what their effects were on, you know, your mental state, your physical state, how different things, you know. So yeah, it's cool. This shit smells like lemons, but that's because of limonene, pinene, and, you know, whatever, merceria. And this is where my wife comes in a lot. You know, coming from a clinical setting, she loves that research aspect. I love to cultivate. She loves those aspects of it. You know, it works well together. We get to have some really great conversations about cannabis together, which is cool. It's a strengthening thing within our relationship. Again, an improved quality of life from when I was active in my addiction, and she was like, you know, ready to be done with me. And that's a fact, Jack, you know. So again, quality of life improved in every aspect. And cannabis, a part of that, cultivation has taken that to new levels. She was a caregiver for a while. And she did love what she was doing, and she had her own space set up and had a couple of patients. But at the end of the day, she still liked the healthcare and what she was doing. We weren't ever carrying full patient loads either which way, so it just made sense to put everything together. And, you know, I'm the caregiver, whatever. But what it did for her, she had to put her hands in the fucking dirt, had to try and keep some plants alive, and then understand why are we doing the processes we're doing to them, you know. So I've used different practices, whatever, throughout every phase of the growth, up to I went into like a weird bud's eye phase where I was like long vegging shit and weaving it into birds' nests. And, you know, I've got one sitting behind your computer screen in a cup, which is, it was cut on 2/6, it looks like, of last year.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah. So I was gonna fucking kill it, and I took cuttings of it. See, it's still in a solo cup, but I date all mine and tag them. Sorry, 2/16, I read that wrong. So I've taken cuttings off it that I then ran, and I liked how it had these little branches. And this is it's kosher tangy. which, you know, again, a good old cultivar that's got some nice old genetic lineages in it. And so I decided what I'm going to do. I just stripped all the bottom off. I started today. And so I'm going to weave this one into a fucking bird's nest or something, probably later tonight when I'm not sleeping like I should be and playing with fucking plants. You know what I mean?
Right on. That's
But
pretty awesome.
what that taught me was some of the extremities to which you can take the plants. Okay. So again, it's a weird, stupid fucking hobby that, you know, I'm bending branches and shit. And then I'm like, wow, you know, this kind of, and I used, you know, LST and fimming, we've done top, whatever. And so bending was not an abstract concept, but bending to that extreme where you're actually braiding them like a fucking rope and it's still growing through that. And it's in a solo cup for like a year and I haven't fucking killed it. You know, it's cool. So, I love playing with plants. That's what it comes down to. And then at the end of the day, you know, that cuttings from that in the last year have provided some gorgeous flowers. It's still sitting there waiting for me to do some weird stuff with it. And so it's a cycle. And because of plant count and certain aspects of what we do, we have to be really particular about what genetics are kept. And then once we have them, you can't fucking let go, you know? And so that's the hard dance is what do I keep? What do I kill? I don't have infinite space and plant count limits us in what we can do. You know what I mean? So genetics become really fucking important to what we're doing.
They are super important. I just wanted to give a shout out to everybody in chat. I think the batteries died in my keyboard, so that's why I haven't said hello to anybody in chat. But I see the red boxes going by and feeling helpless over here. Cheers, everybody. But yeah, the genetics are certainly important, 100%.
Yeah, and that's, you know, again, that's all the craft, man.
They are a resilient plant. I have taken plants that look like your cup there, but were like 5 foot tall. And during some of the weed nerd worlds, just bent them right. I call it the tabletop. You know what I mean? I get them up that high and I'll just be like, snap. And you just fold it out to where that one plant's a 4 foot area. You know what I mean? And people are I'm like, and I could go back and I could literally go back in like an hour or two and with the camera, and them things are already, you know, reaching back up for the light. Yeah, fine.
They always look for the sun. So as long as you put a light above them somewhere, you can kind of turn them down and they will go back and find it. And it's amazing how quick that response is. Like, I was putting one under my nets a few weeks ago, and it was I had some weekend at Gary's by Soulfire, and I vegged them out too fucking long because I was distracted. They were way too full. Whatever, you know, made mistakes. So I ended up splitting one of them in fucking half at my 2 week mark where I was sliding it in the nets, and you know, duct tape and back, and she was turning up into the net within 24 hours. And so it's cool to see that resilience. Still a little heart attack moment, you know what I mean? And I always feel shitty about it, but no, you can do things to them. And actually, if done calculated responsibly and at the right times, can introduce some amazing fucking growth. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've always been a big fan of manipulating the plant like that in various ways. Even if I'm going to let it stand straight up, a little pinching in between the inner nodes here and there can be very beneficial. See, I heard you mention you're the net guy or a net guy, and I've done it a few times, and I absolutely hate it. I hate it.
Okay.
I hate it. Hate it. And you know, at some point, I think I'm almost I think I'm taking away from my strain a little bit because I'm a big advocate for natural stresses or stresses of the plant, bringing out a little bit more. So as you know, she grows up and she starts to, like this, I really believe that's very beneficial for terps and dry gum production. So I'll let them go until I almost see them, ready to fall. And then I'll
So
stuff
there,
that steak in there and, or a yo-yo. I love the yo-yos. Yo-yos are perfect for that. I think, but
yeah,
yeah, no, I think that it's too, yeah. I think you kind of weaken them a little bit, you know what I mean? To
it
where
is.
they,
There stress at like I said, it's that there's that balance, but it's sometimes genetics, sometimes it comes down to environment, but it's knowing your plants and knowing your system, which that's what I love. And I kind of touched on that where, everybody's like my buddy's a real technical grower. And I'm like, do they look happy today? Cool. You know, do they not look that happy? Cool. Let's find out why they're not that happy. And we are, the diagnostics come into play or whatever, but if you keep them happy, then generally don't. But we all have our different styles, and that's important aspect, I think, of the caregiver system too, is that shared cultivation knowledge, which that's been like hugely important for me, and not only cultivating, but that formed like friendships, and now we like are attending each other's kids' birthdays and stuff, and it becomes like part of our life, which is really cool because then when we're together, we can talk about the plant, openly, comfortably, um, and there's no dance, because there are still certain pockets of it that don't view it in the same way we do, with the same openness that we do, and certain things. So it's always nice to have that comfort level with the cultivator. There's community there, you know what I mean? And shared knowledge is important because uh like I said, we do stuff differently. I can learn something from you, you can learn something from me, and that improves what I'm then bringing to my patients, and that's what I always love about it. Anytime I have problems, there are other cultivators at the ready to solve them, because problems are there. You know what I mean? And it may not be something I've seen before, but it may be something they have. And then for the next guy, it may be something they haven't seen, but now I've dealt with it and got other people we can bring in. And that's a really, really unique thing, I think, about the small scale cultivation, is the lack of competition and the encouragement of community. Um, and I hope that's something that's never lost, man.
I hope not. You know, as somebody that's came up over the years, I know exactly what you're talking about. I found that in forums back in the day, which aren't so handy these days. The closest we get is Instagram and shit like that. All the good ones. I think everybody's just given up, even myself included. I use some of this stuff, and I don't even use Instagram like I used to anymore. I used to, that post used to be my journal, basically, because you couldn't keep notes or whatever, and we were already kind of like breaking some rules anyway. So that post, that quick little post of this or that was, when did I flip those? Oh, right, yeah, look right there. And then having to lose that kind of hurt. I don't know how many good builds I've had over the years just for that forum to get taken down and lose all them friends and stuff like that. But it is nice to have other growers to lean on a little bit, and but things are pretty open these days. That's one of the beautiful things about today's current cannabis is, there is a lot of resources out there. These folks that are starting today, you know what I mean, have so much of a better starting point, flat out, than the older growers had. It's easier to pick up because there's new perspective. That's the other thing I love about the new
Oh,
growers.
it comes down to access of information and materials, right? So, like I said, the first cultivator that I knew, and I knew his son, but it was, an underground setup in Indiana, right? So it wasn't like you fucking drove down to the grow shop and bought your equipment. Which, wait, speaking of grow shops, so the day of our event, the CRA does a spot inspection. Okay. And we found out there's a house like down is like, call it a half quarter mile driveway and parking lots and whatever. There was a fence line that wasn't covered. And they said because that one house was there, that people could view our consumption. Now we had like the tent set up in the back of the track. There were food vendors in front of it, but that's like those weird rules. So either which way, we weren't going to be able to open our event. So I ran over to the local grow shop in Hartford, Smith Brothers Indoor Gardening. Smith Indoor Garden Center. And I got to know the dudes a little bit because while we were working up there, I'd stop in there and buy my growing medium and various things from time to time because it was, they were local to where we were trying to do stuff. So it was, why the fuck not, right? And they turned out to be really rad dudes. So anyway, they sold me a bunch of, we used growers plastic to cover the fucking fence line at the event, and it was all done with some of my people I had there. They gave me a really nice discount because they were like, fuck, I know you're buying like 500 feet of plastic that's never going to grow and go in a grow room, is going to be zip tied to a fence and shit, and like explain the situation. But it was a local grow shop that came to the rescue, you know what I'm saying? And again, that's the community. So I didn't need fucking growing medium that day. I needed as much plastic as you got. But they have all that other stuff there, and that's at home cultivation, which is important. But no, that stuff wasn't available back in the day, and so the ubiquity of information and materials is different, which is great. Like I said, if everybody could cultivate for themselves, I think that would be a pretty cool thing. And then we all talked about it a lot more. That would be even a lot. That would be an even better thing.
I kind of in some ways think they unleashed the recreational home grow to put some kind of validity to the black market claim or the overages, because there's no way, every caregiver that I know is in fear. There's always that fear. You know what I mean? We still haven't went all the way. So the fear is still there that we've always had with cannabis. Somebody kicking in that fucking door and having too many plants or too much weight. And the caregivers always kind of felt it more of a blessing. You know what I mean? To have this opportunity to, help people to live this life that we don't necessarily, it's like a code of honor, you know what I mean? We're keeping it as close to everything as we possibly can, to where then now they're blaming us for the illicit black market, as you say there, and then they turn around and give everybody the same rights that we have. You know what I mean? With less restrictions on what the usable cannabis is.
Well,
And
no
yet
need
we're
to.
still taking the blame for any cannabis found is coming from a caregiver.
Right. And for the recreational grower, no need to register within the state system in the same way either that we have to. And so you do put your ass on the line a little bit, a lot of it. And that's what I said. It has to be done because you fucking love this plant and believe in this plant.
%100%. And I'd do it over in a second. I'd do it all over in a second.
Oh yeah, it's been a good journey, brother. And like I said, we take a lot of pride in our house. Cannabis has been very beneficial to me and my quality of life, which has led to a better quality of life for my children, for my wife, and then again, it's connected us to this amazing community, people who are now part of all their lives, and that's what's really cool for me. That's the important thing to me. It's and like you said, living in fear is common, which is why I think there is that brotherhood feeling and that commonality. But it'd be cool if we could just have our commonality and brotherhood and no fear. You know what I mean?
The only thing recreational cannabis really did for me is, I heard you mention this too, and it's very true. You, especially when you grow up perpetual, you never get that break. There's always shit popping, so you never get to leave home. And when you do, I can't how many times I've told you I've been to an event downstate, 3.5 hours one way, and I have to go back home that night because tents had to be opened or this or that. You know what I mean? Just for the love of it. And I've done it. There's been a weekend where I've put in, 14 hours of dry time to hang out for 2 days. And, so yeah, there's definitely a lot of time and headache that goes into growing, but it's so worth it. So worth it.
So worth it. I said, when you're finally cured trimming, I do we do a dry trim. I hand trim everything, so the clones are cut by me. These plants are brought through cycle by my hands, and then the flowers are trimmed up by my hands. That's cool, man. And when you're sitting there, what's that?
I kind of remembered the point of that, and I was saying now I'm interrupting you. I was gonna say the point of that was recreational cannabis actually made it to where I could felt a little bit better leaving home, because now everybody grew. You know what I mean? I wasn't the target in the neighborhood. Now
the only guy.
Yeah. That was the only comfort right there.
When everybody else is doing it, now you're just part of the crowd. To some extent, and but then shit felt kind of draconian again over the last 2 years at the state level and proposed legislative stuff. You know what I mean? So no, some days it feels good and some days it doesn't. You know what I mean? It's like when I sit in a town council meeting in my hometown, and the first guy on the planning commission who's voting for the allowance of opting into recreational cannabis opens up with I was a child of the 60s, and I'm like, cool, we're going in the right direction, right? Thinking we got ourselves a flower child. And he's like, and I lived through that, and I buried a lot of my friends because of marijuana. And I'm like, boom, that was not the fucking punchline we thought was coming. You know what I mean? And so there's still some really just sideways fucking thinking. And unfortunately that permeates a lot of aspects of our society. And these are positions, people who are making decisions. Now, I think New Buffalo is opting in at some point here within the year and will allow for recreational cannabis, at which point, to be honest with you, I think I do feel a little safer about what I'm doing because, there's more cannabis around town now, I guess, for lack of a better phrase. Recreational growing, I don't know that I felt that safe because, again, recreational growing, a couple LED panels aren't going to spike your fucking utility bills the same way that running like perpetual, whether it's HVS, LED, the auxiliary fucking HVAC systems to keep things running the way they need to all the time. I mean, so beyond that, we register as caregivers, as patients, and I guess that's our commitment to what we're doing and what we believe in. Is you have a card that gets sent out to the state that says I'm doing this fucking here, whereas the recreational grower just says I live here. You know what I mean? There's got to be whatever. You know what I'm saying? We're still on a list somewhere, and I'm grateful to be on that list. You know. But as a recreational grower, you don't, I guess, have to do that.
So you've used the term several times, craft cannabis. What do you, in your words, is craft cannabis?
I guess there's no quantifiable limit on. I think it comes down to the methodologies used in the growth cycle, right? Simply put, I think the methodologies used in the growth cycle, the care to the genetics selected, that's craft cannabis. But it comes back to that scalability things. 10,000 plants in a field, unless you have an entire team of capable cultivators who know those plants intimately, and I mean a lot of fucking hands on deck, they're not getting the one-on-one care that we put into it. That's the craft. The craft is what we do to the plants throughout the cycle, the maintenance of our, like I told you, I'm kind of neurotic about cleanliness in my growth. But we do so in ways that are non-intrusive to our plants, and so keeping a clean grow, then I don't have to do any weird shit to my plants, right? Beneficial organisms you talked about earlier, right? So be it predatory mites, rogue beetles, fucking ladybugs, so I'm obsessive even about like plants around my house. So plants around where I live, I guess. And so I got lucky. I found a mantis egg sac in her Christmas tree like 2 years ago. And so my daughter put it out in one of our like ornamentals. Then they all hatched last summer and there were like dozens of praying mantises. Now she found another egg sac in a boxwood, which means we're going to have like babies next year. We've released ladybugs and like we do a vegetable garden with our kids, which teaches them cultivation techniques and things, providing their own food if they ever so choose to. It's a great hobby to connect us. It teaches them about, organic cultivation and pests. My daughter called herself the fucking ladybug queen because she would I'd miss the ladybugs with like sugar water, right? So keep them on site in our garden outdoor. And then I'd find my daughter. What's that?
So that goes for indoor as well. That's
Yeah.
where a lot of people kind of mess up with the ladybugs is they just kind of like keep throwing them in instead of trying to provide a place for them to stay and breed and then go out and lay the eggs around, because it's as you get that cycle going and you get the babies actually running around the room as well. That's the older ladybugs eat, but they don't eat as fast or as much as the younger larvae do. And so you want to try to keep that cycle in the room. It isn't I just chuck them every time you have a problem. It's good to have them, kind of all the time.
I look at them as like the easiest preventative, like prophylactic care for a fucking garden that you can do. Plus, they're kind of cool. Plus, they're kind of fun to watch. So why not? You know. But again, that's the whole connection to all of this. Um, comes the damn family thing, and like I said, the way I figured out to transfer what I'm learning here to my children in a capacity that's legal within, you know, the not bringing a 6-year-old into a fucking cannabis garden is to do a vegetable garden with them. And so boom, that was easy. So we built some raised beds and we did some stuff probably at the beginning of the pandemic. I'm sure that's around when it was happening, when I was trying to, like, you know, keep 3 kids entertained and homeschooled and all that shit. And it turned into some really cool hands-on stuff where you learn about the cycle of nature and growth and your environment, and how important it is to maintain the balance of all these things. You know what I mean? That's the craft, brother. And so when you say what is craft cannabis, these are the conversations I have with my other caregiver cultivator buddies. Um, not that you know, and I think that's where the craft comes in, is in those, that nuanced knowledge. You know, you've been doing this a while, you've been hanging out with folks who do it for a while, and you learn a lot over the years, and that becomes your craft that you put into your plants, you know.
I agree. I agree. And on the large scale things, you were kind of mentioning, uh, or maybe large scale thing, having a team of, you know, people that were intimate with the plant. You know, I think that's debatable too. I don't think that that could be achieved is if you took, you know, they were all probably working with the same cultivar, so they were somewhat, you know, but each like having individual teams for a set amount of plants, not like, okay, today you're working zone 5, you know, that same person goes to zone 5 every day and has that event intimate plants, you know,
But
a
then they have to
relationship.
be uniquely familiar. I'm with you. So I did say that somewhat facetiously and sarcastically, brother, because I do think it's an almost impossible task. I think there is a limitation to, um, and here's where the problem comes in. You need, all right, let's call it, you know, what's the max? Maybe 150 plants, maybe it's fucking 200 plants, maybe it, like I said, 500 if you have a couple folks, you know,
See, I
guys.
think those are like those numbers are still one person numbers. A lot of work, a lot of work, but you know what I mean. You've got a couple hundred, especially, you know, the perpetual system. You got moms, you got fucking babies, you got
Right.
teens. You know what I mean. So you spread those numbers out, and then, you know, actual flowering, you know what I mean? It becomes a little bit more understandable. It's the ones that really set me back, that use like all 500 for like the flowering. You know what I mean? They're just going sea of green straight up. And I'm like, that's always been to me. I'm like, no, fed your mouth, get you a little bit bigger plant. You wasted your numbers. Maybe someday if we go by square foot, but right now it's numbers. I can't. It's, I'm like,
But
no.
that's where, like, the numbers game, I do think, um, I don't know. That's a fuck dance. You know what I mean? But again, there's a maintenance level where if not everybody in the organization is a cultivator directly, and then it becomes hard if they don't or own the facility that you're working at. You know what I mean? So for $15 an hour, are you really putting that same knowledge that you have in Probably not, because they're not your fucking plants. They're someone else's at the end of the day. And so I think that's an aspect of it. Not that there aren't like capable people working within these facilities, but when you don't own the shit and you're just there to fucking delete the row for the day or whatever the hell it is, it mitigates it to a menial fucking task, and takes the fucking soul out of it. I don't know, for lack of a better term. You know
That's
what I
why
mean?
I've never went up to the larger scale grow, you know what I mean, working for somebody else right there. And I think you're right. It would get, to kind of suck a lot of the love out of it. But I think that's if you large scale grow and you're just being sent out like a bunch of farm hands instead of being,
Right.
in charge of set amount of plants and this is your zone and you're responsible for this. You got to have some kind of pride in your work, love what you do, don't fucking do it. I mean, that goes for anything. I'd say $15 an hour you're talking about, that's the guy at McDonald's disgruntled. You're hoping that guy's happy to be flipping your fucking burger.
and what it takes to care for these plants properly is a high level of fucking knowledge. You know what I mean? Which is gained over a long fucking time. And in any other arena or industry, that has value. You know what I mean? It's not something that's like marginalized, criminalized, persecuted. It's something that's fucking celebrated and of value. And so, but those are systemic issues. Again, those are like bigger picture shit. At the end of the day, the things that are important to me are maintenance and preservation of the patient and caregiver system as we have it now. And that's simply put is, we do provide good medicine because it's at a personal level. And I'm very fortunate that I've had some long-standing relationship with some patients. Some of my newer patients fucking rock, and I value the information that they have for me, and that's cool. I learn from them a lot, all the fucking time, not just their preferences and needs. They also have experiential learning that can be shared, but again, maybe not the either physical ability and or space ability to cultivate for themselves. So now I can do for them with their shared knowledge and my shared knowledge. And that's a fucking powerful thing. You know what I mean? Participating in your medicine is cool. It doesn't exist anywhere, in our other system. You're told by your physicians, this is what works. This is what you do. Our system is highly personal and has input from the patient, and that's the best part of it, man.
And that's what we're gonna get. That's what we're getting with recreational cannabis right there already. Then patients are going into the dispose there and they're going, this is it. This is what's gonna work for you. This is your limited selection.
Which is back to the model that everybody's come from, not necessarily one that works. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we definitely need to keep the caregiver system 100% alive.
But it's a number of plants, brother. It's maintenance and care at a level that we can put our hands on, and I know, like I said, I'm every day, you know what I mean? There aren't days that it's not day,
Yeah, but as somebody has done it for a very, very long time, fucking 72 is a manageable number for one person easily. So, and I think that could even be scaled up a little bit to like $150.
And
And
I'm with you
so,
on that. The frustration that I've always had is the uh, so within the plant count constraint, the inability for genetic exploration, right? So popping seeds is a risk-taking endeavor, and you're gonna lose plants and shit. So if I have 72 plants and I'm gonna dedicate fucking 24 of my plants to exploring fucking genetics that could potentially not work out. You know what I mean? And that's where 150, I think you're providing the same level of care, but it gives you the ability for genetic retention and genetic exploration. You know what I mean? While still providing your meds without a disruptive cycle. That's always my fear, is disrupting my cycle of providing for my patients. And so genetic stability becomes an important thing on a lot of levels. You know what I mean? And so yeah, I'm with you, brother. That's pretty spot on.
so what type of grow medium do you grow in?
I've been a cocoa grower. Yeah, always. I'm working with a buddy now to switch over to a living soil system. It's time. I'm a creature of habit, and so once I do things a certain way, I kind of stick with it. So I still run HPS, and I know, you know, from a consumption standpoint, whatever. I'm having a harder time with it. I do love the structure and quality of CMH and HPS flower, and so, but I think LEDs are, obviously from a consumption of resources standpoint, and certain things are pretty cool, and as they've developed and gotten further and matching spectrum and why the fuck not? But I've seen some flower out of like checkerboarded systems, and that's kind of cool too, which I like that, the introduction of both spectrums to kind of get your structure you want and still maybe be using a little less resources. But no, we're kind of in the process of switching over. I got a buddy who did he did already, and so I think he just cut his first flowers this past weekend, and I'm looking forward to checking them out, because our setups are very similar, and he had all the materials provided by a buddy, which was cool, because that made, shit's not cheap. We're all fucking broke. So it's cool when those gifts show up and give an opportunity to see change, you know what I mean? And but no, I'm pretty old school in what I do. I've been cocoa HPS for my whole time. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I could see that orange glow behind you has got HPS written all over.
Yeah, and then so look, check it, and I have a cloner behind you again that literally just has cups sitting on it with not being used, because I switched over to the cloner and it basically just turned into a hydro system for some test shrubs because I never fucking took them out of there. So, there are always better ways. I'm no stranger to fucking saying that. But the ways I use work to provide really quality meds for my patients. And like I said, I have thrown my stuff through the lab and it tested really clean, and I was really proud of that. And because we didn't have to, again, use any weird practices to get that test clean, and I didn't have to pay the lab a lot because I didn't have any fucking money anyway. So it would have had to be free if I was looking for a boost,
Love the bag on top there. A lot of people don't know or utilize the bag on top of clone like that, man. You transplant a clone and she droops a little bit. You throw that bag on there, man, she'll perk right back up.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was again, Pooney as my caregiver over the years shared all the shit he had learned over his years. And that's where that cumulative knowledge is really fucking important, because he had however many years of growing prior to the point I met him. And then we spent our time together. He's continued. He shared it with other cultivators, then he shares it. You know what I'm saying? And so it is a cycle of growth. Again, not to use punny stuff or whatever, but it's an important cycle of growth. And like I said, his techniques work to provide me my medicine when he was doing it for me. And application of those has worked for me to provide my own medicine, which is really cool. And then my patient's medicine, which is even cooler. So it's a cool, it's a spider web network that grows in the best, when we're working in the best circumstances, I appreciate you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I really appreciate you having me on here tonight, Eagle. I'm going to go hop on into the garden here for a little bit and get a little work done, and then maybe get a little sleep done at some point.
That's the important stuff. So I guess a couple of things before you go. That Zoom link that I sent you this evening is always good now. So anytime you see a Weed Nerd World in the title, you can come hang out at this point. Unless it's a second one-on-one, you have free reign to come and go anytime you see that title. Come hang out in the middle of the night when you're in the grow room and you just want to take a break and smoke and talk or whatever. Feel free to come hang out, man. We're always looking for new people, new perspectives, all that good stuff. So please take me up on that. The other thing I'd like to get from you before we go is good mouse. I forgot the mouse still works. I almost panicked. I'm not gonna get my sound bite. Is this sound bite, basically what I'm looking for, my version of would be, hey, this is Eagle and I'm on fucking Talking Shit with Eagle, episode 775. You say whatever you want before, after that, as long as there's somewhere in there, I'd be more than grateful. Basically, this will be a commercial for your episode at some point. So you ready?
Wait, I'm sorry. Run over that real quick again, brother.
Basically, my version of the sound bite is, hey, my version of would be, hey, this is Eagle and I'm on fucking Talking Shit with Eagle, episode 775. But you can make it your own. Say whatever you want, as long as it's kind of got the bare bones that in there. I'd be more than grateful.
I got you, brother. I'm sorry. I hit pieces.
I cut that.
All right. This is Jeff with Beachgrass and Beachgrass Events on fucking Talking Shit with the Eagle. Appreciate y'all having me on. Episode 775.
There you go. It has been an awesome night and getting to know you. And I hope that I do see you again, maybe in the second episode, but hopefully we'll see you in the Weed Nerd World. And moreover, hopefully in one of these cannabis events around the state here, because
you were were you out at the Organic Cup?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we'll cross paths, I'm sure. That was a good time and a good weekend, man. Really enjoyed that. I said the nice thing about those events are, again, there's a lot of cultivator to cultivator conversations, and that is a really unique experience. But it also is cultivator to consumer, and it's processor. And when I say processor, these are like extraction fucking experts who want to also understand cultivation and the plant. And so that's where the whole healing comes from. It is, you know, for me, it's a body, mind, and spirit thing entirely. And you know, those events are a really unique connection point for, like I said, that cultivator to consumer, uh, patient. Um, that's what needs to happen, because that's the only way, you know, education and awareness, that's the only way we can get it done. You know what I mean?
I agree. I agree. Well, have fun in your grow room, my friend.
Always do, brother. Even when it's not fun, it's still fun.
I agree. I agree. It's a very zen area. I actually, if you go back and this right here, this shit, I'm gonna say, because it's providing a means right now, this like awesomeness type thing. But up until 650, I'll say, no, Joe Petrie was I, right around 650. Every episode was done in my grow room. So all plants, that's my area, and I would sit there every night in a big old U of
Oh yeah,
cannabis.
yeah,
And
with
then,
that lovely glow behind you. I've seen it, brother. You look good under them lights.
oh man, so yeah, I miss it, man. No other place would I rather be, and I can't wait to get back set up to where I'm doing the show back in the surrounded by those lovely ladies. So I'm jealous. Go hang out, my friend.
I am, brother. Hey, I really appreciate y'all, and we'll check back in with you very soon, man.
Right on. Have a great night. For the rest of you guys, thank you for tuning in. It has been a great night. Hopefully you guys give them a follow over on Instagram and get to know him a little bit better. Reach out, say hello. And other than that, you guys have a great night. Random acts of kindness do save lives. Don't forget to do something nice for somebody. They really do change lives.